Sabrina, we're good? Okay.
Yep, we've started the stream.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to say the usual protocol for the meeting. I'm going to provide a very short review of the protocols for the electronic participation in this committee meeting. As a result of the high counts of COVID-19 cases, the committee chair and I will conduct and participate in this meeting remotely. The CAO and executive leadership team will also continue to participate remotely. The recommended view to ensure a full view of the presentation slides is the stack or side-by-side view, which can be accessed through the layout button. This meeting is being live streamed. In order to ensure that this meeting remains accessible to the public, the meeting will be recessed for 15 minutes if the live stream is interrupted or fails. Staff will work to get the live stream up and running as soon as possible. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon located to the right of your name on the participant list. Speakers list will be determined based on members who have raised their hand using the icon. Recorded votes are not allowed at committee meetings. The committee chair or I will call for any objections. If you have any objections, please indicate your name and objection. If no objections are stated, the motion will be deemed to be approved. If you are participating electronically and are leaving the meeting, please send an email to council@pilregionca to indicate that you are leaving the meeting. If you leave the meeting for any votes thereafter, you will be marked as absent. We shall now commence the meeting with a roll call. Please indicate your presence by responding here when called upon. Councillor Demerla? Councillor Demerla? I'll get back to her. Councillor Dillon?
Sorry, present.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Dillon?
Yes, here.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini?
Here, good morning.
Thank you. Chair Nika? I don't see him yet on the screen. I'll come back to him. Councillor Innes?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Councillor Mahoney?
Good morning. I'm present.
Good morning. Thank you. Councillor Ras?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sinclair?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Starr?
Present.
Other councillors noted as present are Councillor Groves. If there are any other councillors, please say it now and we'll note you in the minutes. So I will pass it over to Councillor Starr to preside over the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I just want to remind you that if you do want to speak, please use the hand icon because of the number of people attending. Sometimes it's difficult to catch up to you. Okay, welcome to the meeting. It's the first, as we'll call to order. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Hearing none. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, suggestions?
Clerks didn't receive any additional items for today's agenda, Councillor Starr.
Could you repeat that? It kind of broke up on my end.
Oh, sorry. Clerks didn't receive any additional items from our perspective, but councillors might have anything added.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Dillon that the agenda be approved as noted. All in favor? If I don't hear anything, I'll assume that we're all in favor. Okay, we're going to move we have a delegation, Joseph Ling from Emerald Energy from Waste, and that item is on our agenda as 5.3. And Joseph, are you in the audience? I see you on the bar here.
I'm here, yes.
Okay, you can go ahead with your presentation whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I guess the first slide. Bring up the first slide.
If you can just give us a minute, Joe, you can start and then we'll broadcast it as soon as we can. Thank you.
Sure.
You can start, Joe.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Joe Ling, the General Manager of Emerald Energy from Waste. I bring greetings to you from Brian O'Connor, our president, and our owners, the O'Connor family. I thank you for giving us this time to present a brief update on a couple of exciting projects that we've had ongoing at Emerald, and to formally request an increase of the volume of waste currently allocated to us. We're pleased to answer any questions about Emerald, our projects, or our request at the end of the presentation. The next slide, please. We have two exciting projects that are wrapping up in 2021. The first project is the Unit 6 approval. So on March 18th of this year, we received approval from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to install the 6th Energy from Waste unit at Emerald. We currently operate with 5 units with a processing capacity of approximately 150,000 tons per year. The 6th Energy from Waste unit will increase our processing capacity to 180,000 tons per year, which aligns it with our actual approved capacity. We expect to install the 6th unit within the next 2 years in response to increasing demand for energy from waste services. But a more exciting project that we have ongoing is the installation of a new steam turbine. After 30 years of loyal service, our existing turbine is going to be replaced. The new steam turbine is much more efficient at capturing energy from our energy from waste process and directing it as steam down to the Cascades recycling plant on Bramley Road. With this increased efficiency, we're going to be able to reduce the use of our natural gas boiler and reduce our carbon emissions by approximately 12,000 tons per year. With the two projects, we're also continually looking at new forms of energy sales, including new steam opportunities, district heating projects, and even the production of electrolytic hydrogen with our surplus electricity. So together, these projects reinforce our vision of developing Emerald as a means of diverting waste from landfill disposal and to provide a local source of low carbon energy right here in Peel. We're looking forward to the next 25 years of recovering energy from waste here in Peel and helping our community transition to a low carbon economy. The next slide, please. We returned to the committee as a follow-up to our initial presentation back in 2017. At that time, we reestablished a relationship with Peel and have been doing business with you ever since. Over the past 4 years, we've built a positive, mutually beneficial relationship between Emerald and the region. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve the residents and businesses here in Peel. We're respectfully requesting the committee consider increasing the volume of the residential waste allocated to Emerald to 20,000 tons per year. Since 2017, the cost of haulage to landfill has increased to the point where landfill pricing is consistent with that of our local energy recovery service. Peel could actually see additional savings by diverting trucks directly from the collection routes, particularly here in Brampton, and reducing congestion at their transfer stations. We also expect the price of haulage to increase over the next years as the carbon surcharges increase, so additional savings could be found going into the future. Peel will also enjoy the added additional benefit of reducing carbon emissions associated with hauling waste to their remote landfill sites. Now, while we prefer regular volume to help us manage our operations, we are willing to work with the existing more casual arrangement where materials are directed to us in accordance to Peel's operating needs. So I thank you for your consideration this morning, and we certainly appreciate Peel's continued support of our business. I think you can have the final slide there.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'm going to take a look here if we have any questions. Otherwise, we'll go to the presentation by Norm. I don't see any questions, but make yourself available, and I'm sure we'll get some questions. Norm, will you take us through your presentation?
Councillor Starr, we just need a motion of receipt for the delegation.
Councillor Innes, all those in favor, carried. Okay, Norm, anytime you'd like to go ahead, you have to unmute.
Okay, just once the presentation comes up, there I see it now. Good morning, councillors, Mr. Chair. Just before I start, I just want to give one caution that this project is still in the procurement phase. We're bringing a procurement report to council in July on it. So today's presentation is just an information presentation to bring.
Right.
I think you're in the wrong.
Chair.
Wrong.
Yeah, Chair. Could we start with 5.3 and then the delegate can we change the agenda order to that?
That's what I thought. That's what I thought I indicated. We'd bring this one forward, Norm. 5.3.
Oh, okay. Sure. So if
you can just give us a brief outline.
Okay, sure. No, that makes sense. And I don't have a presentation for this particular report, but I just want to let council know, and there is a report obviously on the agenda. Peel Region has been using Emerald Energy for the last 4 years as an alternative drop-off location to add flexibility to our system. We have an existing contract with them where we are allowed to deliver up to 10,000 tons of waste per year with no put or pay commitment. So we can deliver as much or as little as we need to. And I think one of Joe's slides showed that in 2017 and 2018, we only needed to deliver 3,000 and then 6,000 tons. The last 2 years, we kind of hit the 10,000 ton limit. In fact, went a little bit over, but on average, we're still below the 10,000 tons. So having this site in play does add a lot of flexibility to Peel. There are days when our transfer station backs up for one reason or another, and our other major transfer stations sometimes back up as well. We have a series of 4 or 5 small transfer stations that we can use to direct our truck to in those cases, and of course, Emerald Energy from waste. The Emerald price is a bit higher than the landfill price, so we try to use it sparingly, but obviously when we need it, and it does provide a good outlet. So because we hit the 10,000 ton limit the last couple of years, and especially last year with COVID, there was quite a bit of pressure on our system. We had talked to Emerald about increasing that number to 15,000 as recommended in the report. So our recommendation is still to increase the tonnage limit to 15,000 tons to still not have any put or pay commitment. I would not recommend going all the way to 30,000 tons at this point, just because we just don't need that much flexibility and extra capacity in our system right now. And staff doesn't recommend any put or pay commitments at this time, just because the price differential is there between landfill and Emerald, and the reason we're willing to pay the price differential, small as it might be, is because it adds flexibility to our system. So staff is still recommending the recommendations set out in the report. So if you have questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, thanks, Norm. Councillor Innes, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the report and the staff recommendations. I appreciate the flexibility that this option provides Peel. One of the questions that I did have for Norm, and maybe you can take that back for a conversation with Emerald, is even if we are increasing to the 15 and potentially more so into the future, there is the additional cost, as was mentioned by Norm, but a cost that isn't and hasn't been discussed would be the the transferring of loads that would be required because of trucking capacity within the site. And perhaps, Norm, you could speak to that, because that is an additional cost on top of what tonnage would be, if I understand correctly. And so working with Emerald to make sure that there's enough trucking capacity to accommodate Peel's needs from that curbside delivery pickup would be great. And then, as I said, I'm happy to move the recommendation, and I guess the chair will need a seconder. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else on the board. Councillor Innes, following up our discussion on this earlier, the only thing I'd probably suggest is two things, actually, is that to prevent coming back, just in case we have some sort of garbage pandemic, that we, since it's a flexible approach and since we don't have to give them tonnage, I'd like to see this go to 20,000. And with the understanding that you, Norm, or staff will work with Emerald to see if there's any possibility of any price decrease. And Joseph, you're online, and I'm not sure if that's a possibility or not, but what are your thoughts on that? If the tonnage starts to increase, or for whatever reason we have to use your services, can we? I don't want to negotiate in this committee, but can we rely on you to negotiate with the staff that there could be some alleviation to the price?
Certainly, we'd be willing to talk to staff. We can talk to Norm about what that differential is, and then see if there's ways that we could make it up. And as I said, the cost of transfer, if the trucks came in directly from the routes, the collection routes, that is an additional cost savings. And we do give priority to the smaller trucks that arrive here, so they do get in and out very quickly. And we have been working with the region on making sure that we aren't the trucks aren't delayed here. So, but certainly I'd be more than happy to talk to Norm about going forward.
Well, knowing Norm, I'm sure he's going to hold you to that. So I don't know, Councillor Innes, if you'd like to.
I'm happy to move the amendment to 20, and then the recommendation as amended.
Okay. Any other comments on that from any other members of the committee? I see Councillor Mahoney.
Sorry, can I just add, Mr. Chairman? Just on Councillor Innes's earlier point, and we'll work with Emerald to move the tonnage to 20,000 if that's what's given to us to do. We'd probably want to increase the truck count per day going into the site. I think right now we're allowed 10 trucks a day to go into the site. When we moved it to 15,000 tons, we increased that to 15 trucks a day. We'd want to increase the number of trucks if we go to 20, just to make sure we are allowed to or able to use all curbside vehicles, right? Because if we have to transfer it to larger trucks to stay under the truck count, that adds cost to us, and we would not want to do that. So we'll work with Emerald to make all those things happen.
So can I just ask?
And if that happens, maybe you can bring that back to us and let us know what the progress is.
Chair,
sure.
Can I make a suggestion? Could I suggest that we make an amendment that it goes to 20, providing that they can accommodate 20 trucks a day, and if they can't, then it goes back to 15 and 15 trucks a day, because that is an additional cost to the taxpayers that has to be considered.
Okay, I think that's a good.
Mr. Chair.
Hands all over. Okay, Janice.
Thank you. If I could make a suggestion, as opposed to having the committee do the negotiations, I think we understand the goal. Maybe it would be a better motion to refer the increase back to staff to negotiate the appropriate terms, and then report back to the committee. I feel like we're kind of mixing up our roles here. So I think if I could ask you to do that, as opposed to just directing talking about trucks and tonnage. Norm will figure it out, and then we'll come back and close the loop with the committee if that works for you.
Yeah, and that's why I tried to say we're not negotiating. And Janice, I'm glad you clarified that. So that's probably a good suggestion, and to come back and then we all are on the same page. So if that is satisfactory, Councillor Innes, and I think staff know the intent, and Emerald know the intent. So let's progress with that and try to work things out. Okay, Councillor Innes. Let me see who else is on the board. Councillor Mahoney.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I meant to take my hands down. What Janice said was exactly what I was going to say. So appreciate her making those comments and look forward to the report back.
That's great. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Good discussion, and hopefully things can work out for both sides. Calvinus, you're moving referral back to staff based on the discussion that we had today. Yes? Okay. All those in favor? I don't see any opposition. Carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. And I guess you'll be back in touch with Norm and staff.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to, we might as well go back to the regular agenda, Norm. So we're back on to, I think, the one you wanted to do at the beginning, item 5.1. You're on the board.
Okay, I'll just wait for the clerk to bring up the presentation. There it is. So once again, if you can flip to the next slide. So just a little bit of background. In 2017, Regional Council approved the development of an anaerobic digestion facility, which we now call the Peel Renewable Natural Gas Center, as part of its long-term waste management strategy. In 2017, Council approved the strategic terms for the project that defined the roles and responsibilities of the various parties and the performance requirements of the project. Regional Council also approved the procurement, the use of a design, build, operate, and maintain contract for the facility. In 2019, Regional Council approved the acquisition of 125 Orenda Road in Brampton, where the facility will be built. In today's presentation, I'll just present an overview of the project, its status, and next steps. Next slide, please. Just a short technical description of the project. So the successful proponent, who we call Project Co, or Project Company, they will design, build, and commission an AD facility to process 90,000 tons of green bin organic material per year. They will operate and maintain the facility, including life cycle replacement work, for 15 years and an optional 5-year extension that can be exercised at Peel's sole discretion. They'll process the organics to produce a certified fertilizer and renewable natural gas. They will market the certified fertilizer. They'll pre-treat the wastewater and discharge it to the sanitary sewer under a surcharge agreement. They will manage all the residue, and they'll deliver the renewable natural gas to Enbridge for injection into the Enbridge gas distribution system. And then that'll happen under a separate agreement between Peel and Enbridge. Next slide, please. This slide just kind of shows a graphic overview of the responsibilities of the different parties. So Peel will supply organics. The project company will design, build, and operate the facility. They'll produce and manage the outputs. The renewable natural gas will be injected by Enbridge into their distribution system. It will still be owned by Peel, and we will have a choice whether we use it ourselves for heating or fuel, or whether we sell it. Next slide, please. Some of the project benefits, which I think are many, it'll replace the region's aging composting infrastructure with technology that's better able to remove contaminants from the green bin material. The AD facility will process just the green bin organics. Yard waste will have to be processed separately. It will allow for the addition of diapers and pet waste to the green bin program, which will increase diversion by 5 percentage points. It'll produce certified fertilizer, for which there are established markets, and it'll produce renewable natural gas that can be sold or used by Peel to meet its diversion targets, its emission reduction targets. At full capacity, the facility will produce approximately 6 million cubic meters of natural gas per year, which contains about or just over 200,000 gigajoules of energy. The region heating its buildings and cooling its buildings across the region uses 600 gigajoules of energy per year. So this would produce about a third of our energy needs for the region. And if we choose to, we could also sell it. There's a pretty healthy market for the sale of this renewable natural gas. It'll help Peel meet its own diversion targets, 75%, and it'll also help meet the provincial organics diversion targets that are in place. And then finally, it will provide a showcase facility for green technology. Next slide, please. So the procurement process that we followed is a best practice for large complex projects such as this. We used a competitive procurement process that included requests for pre-qualifications. We then issued request proposal to the pre-qualified teams. We had a designated single point of contact in purchasing, and the process included commercially confidential meetings with each of the bidders. There were 3 rounds of those meetings. They were opportunities where the teams could ask questions or propose changes to the draft agreement. The region would consider those requests and issue any changes to all of the proponents so that they were all able to fairly bid on these things. I would note that the CCMs, the commercial meetings, they began before COVID, and they kind of continued through COVID. And staff did notice a heightened awareness of risk once COVID hit. There was certainly a heightened awareness of risk and supply chain risk, especially by proponents. So we had a lot of questions on that. And then finally, we're just in the evaluation phase right now, but we will be bringing a report to the July 8th meeting of council. So council actually makes the award based on the recommendations of staff. Next slide, please. These are just some of the timelines. We began the process in 2019 with the RFP process, had commercially confidential meetings, issued the final documents. So you can see technical proposals were due on March 23rd, and we have received those and are reviewing them. Financial proposals were due on May 7th, and we have received those and are reviewing them as well. Once we're finished our review, we will write a report to council and bring our recommendations. That'll be the July 8th meeting. Then financial closing, once it's awarded by council, assuming that it is, we have to do some work with the contractors to finalize the contracts. And the last step of that is the financial closing date, which we're targeting in September. The proposal validity period, I just want to talk about that for a minute. It's very important. Proposals are valid and binding on the bidders for a period of 180 days for 6 months. Actually, I think it's 185 days. Anyway, that period ends on October 19th. So we have to have everything wrapped up by that time and contracts entered into, or they're no longer bound by the proposal. So it seems like a long ways away right now, but there's a lot of work to be done between now and then. So this is a fairly time-sensitive project, which is one of the reasons we wanted to bring this information report, just to get councillors back up to speed before we hit you with the July 8th recommendation report. Then we go into, permitting, design, construction, commissioning, and operations begin in late 2024, early 2025. Next slide, please. So the key next steps, we're still evaluating proposal. As I said, we'll bring a recommendation report to council on July 8th, and then we have to finalize and execute all agreements by October 19th. Next slide, please. I just want to switch over to the biogas, the Enbridge side of things. So in 2017, the region and Enbridge began exploring options to treat the biogas generated from this facility to produce renewable natural gas and to inject it into Enbridge's natural gas distribution system. In 2020, we actually entered into an agreement with Enbridge for them to complete a formal capacity assessment, which is needed to complete preliminary design of the injection station and to prepare cost estimates for the project to be included in the subsequent agreement with us. We've been negotiating a biogas service agreement with them since mid-2020. And this process did include one commercially confidential meeting with each of the bidders on the project, so that Enbridge is aware of what they're thinking, and they're aware of what Enbridge needs are. So we will bring on July 8th. We will bring a recommendation to enter into that biogas service agreement with Enbridge for them to inject the gas into their pipeline and for us to own it and take it out wherever we see fit. Next slide, please. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the risks on this project. As with any project, there are risks, and of course, the bigger the project, it seems the bigger the risks. Some of those risks, and our principle we used is that the risk should be managed by whoever's best able to manage them. And any risks that the proponents are able to manage, we left with them, and they're going to be accountable for those and responsible for them. But there were a few risks that were kind of beyond their control that the region will accept some of the risk in if they materialize. The first one is that utility cost increases above CPI. So if utility costs go up faster than the consumer price index does, Peel will kind of make up the difference in that. And that's for electricity and electricity that's needed, or natural gas that might be needed there. The second one is permitting. So the proponents are responsible for getting site plan approval and getting all the environmental permits from the province, and that's their responsibility to do that. If something happens that's beyond their control and not their fault, that delays permitting or that prevents permitting, then we can't really hold them accountable for that. So just a couple of items. So the City of Brampton official plan and its current zoning bylaw, they both permit the intended use of an AD facility at this site location. It is possible, of course, that the City of Brampton could change its zoning bylaw, and that might make the permit or the existing use no longer permitted there. If that happens, project company, they'll be unable to secure site plan approval or an ECA. The project would have to be terminated, and we would have to somehow compensate them. So that's a risk that the region retains. Of course, we have been engaged regularly with the City of Brampton to minimize this risk. We're quite confident that it won't materialize, but it is one of those things. If it happens, we can't expect the bidder to be accountable for it. The other thing, and I think Council's aware, the site itself is within the secondary bird hazard zone of the Pearson Airport. We've been working with the GTAA on this, and we've been doing bird studies to show that this will be a safe use and it won't present any unacceptable bird hazards to airplanes. And again, based on the results of our studies, our expectation is there won't be any problems in that regard, but should they again prevent the development of this facility, we can't hold the contractor accountable for that. Of course, we'll know that before development starts on the facility. We're just wrapping up our study now and going to have some final meetings with the GTAA over the next little while. Quantity and quality of organics. So the agreement includes provisions to temporarily relax the performance guarantees around the operation of the site if the region were to deliver organics with toxic substances in it that upset the biological process within the digesters. Again, we have pretty good controls on our waste streams. We have a pretty good household hazardous waste program. Haven't had problems with toxic substances yet. We don't think we will, but I just want to make council aware. These are the types of risks that we can't reasonably put onto the contractor because they have no way of managing them. Next slide, please. So I think, as I said, while the scale, scope, and complexity of the project generates risks, a strategy to mitigate them has been developed. They'll be mitigated through service delivery contract development, to be managed primarily by the party best able to control and manage it cost effectively. And as I said, the region will retain some risks. And this is true on all of our projects. It's not unique to this project. It's just we want to point it out before we go into the procurement award. Next slide, please. So next steps, you will see a report to council on July 8th with a recommendation to award the contract. I should say when these minutes go to council, I will present a shorter version of this slide so that all councillors are kind of back up to speed on the project before the July 8th meeting. Next slide, please. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. First on the board, we have Councillor Rass.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation today, Norm. I guess you kind of touched on the one of the key risks, which is the quality of the organics. You noted that we're going to be accepting diapers and pet waste, but not yard waste. And I'm just wondering, how do we work through some of those issues, and what kind of lead up communications are we going to be doing to when these waste diversion changes take place?
Well, we'll definitely have communications out to our residents when we do it. Again, it's going to happen in 2024, so we have a little bit of time. To do this. So we currently, yard waste is collected separately from green bin right now, so that one shouldn't be too difficult. And the reason yard waste can't go into this facility is the digestion process. It can't digest the woody pieces. So
okay.
If somebody puts some leaves and nice green plant material in, that's fine. But if they get into sticks and pieces of wood, it comes out as residue from this type of facility. And that's fine because we should be able to find some more economical yard waste processing if it's just being processed by itself. The diapers and pest waste, we will develop, communication programs to get those added in and get people to put them in there rather than the garbage when the time comes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the progress on this.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the list here. I have one question, Norm. You spent a little bit of time on risk and risk management, and is this part of the evaluation process with the bidders or tenders? Um, as a sidebar, who's eliminating risk? Who are asking you to take more risk? Is that part of the? Yeah, I see you laughing, but is that part of the discussion? Because you spent a few minutes trying to mitigate that.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's just because I've been a little too close to this project. I'm seeing and hearing about the risks more than usual, and it was part of our, part of the design of this process was to make sure we're not putting risks on the contractor that are just going to drive up price and cause problems, right? So that was part of the commercially confidential meetings, was to discuss risk. So I'm just well aware of it. I mean, these things happen on every project that we have. These risks aren't unique to this project. And certainly with COVID, there's a bit more awareness of supply chain risk if they have to buy pieces of equipment or parts or certain chemicals in the future. And if they're not sure what COVID's going to do to that supply chain, we certainly heard about that during the process. But most of the risks, we tried to get that resolved during the commercially confidential meetings so that they have to bid to a set standard of risks that they have to take on and risks that we will take on. I'm sure, and I don't want to really get into the evaluation process too much today, but I would think that if they treat risk differently, and if there's one that presents less risk to us, there's got to be some benefit to that in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, because I'd hate to see that, and I don't know the evaluation process you use, but there's walkaway clauses that is a risk, and because they couldn't do something or the process itself, and otherwise we wouldn't be starting all over again. It's taken so long as it is. Anyway, I think you've answered my question. Okay, I'm going to look at the board once again here. Any other further questions or comments? It's going to be a good report coming forward on July 8th. I see no further questions.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Mahoney, deputation. And the report, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, the final item that we have on the agenda is to do with the report that was sent back from the region on the media, the biomedia. And Norm, you want to just take us through quickly on that?
Sure. So this is the biofilter at the Peel Integrated Waste Management Site on Torbram Road, where our main composting facility is. It treats the air from the composting facility, which if it was discharged directly to the air would be quite smelly and not please our neighbors. So this facility was built in 2006 when the composting facility was built, and it's been in operation ever since then. And the way this biofilter works, it's a concrete box, so to speak, with a couple of shelves in it. And then within those, there's what we call biofilter media, which are little balls that are kind of porous. They're kept wet, and that gives the bugs a place to live. They just kind of live on the surface, and as the odor air goes through it, the bugs actually eat the molecules and convert them into things that just don't smell as much. So what happens over time, the media wears out. The air's flowing through it. There's stuff happening. There's bugs on it, living and dying. It starts to get plugged up, and it has to be replaced. So we've done one. There's 2 layers. We've replaced 1 layer in the past. It's now at the point where both layers have to be replaced. When we looked at, should we replace the entire biofilter or just the media? and landed on just the media. The biofilter, it's a pretty solid structure. There's no need to replace it, and of course, replacing the whole thing would push the cost up. From 600,000, it would push it up to about $3 million probably to build a new one. We didn't look at it for this particular project, but for other projects, we have considered other types of odor treatment. And what we found through those investigations is that biofilters are still the state of the art for this type of this type of odor treatment. Of course, the biofilter, it was built by BioRem. It's their proprietary technology. So they're the only people who are allowed to work on it and fix it. We do have a maintenance contract with them, ongoing maintenance contract with them. So we need to keep that in place as well. But yeah, it's time. If we don't replace the media, our estimation is by this time next year we'll be in big trouble with odor complaints and stuff like that. So it has to be fixed.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on this? I just wanted to, why we brought it back last week was just to make sure that the community understood exactly what was happening. I questioned, in fact, that there's only one supplier, and I think Norm and his crew have a pretty good handle on keeping costs in hand, so I appreciate that. Okay, any questions, comments? I don't see any. Councillor Sinclair, will you move this?
Are there any objections?
Any objections? I don't see any.
Okay,
Carried.
thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of the formal agenda. I don't have any communications. Other business from any of the members at all? Anything new? Comments? Councillor Sinclair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just observations and a request regarding reuse at the Quarry Road, we'll call it a CRC. And Quarry Road up in Caledon was the first pilot area for looking at diversion from landfill. And the whole idea of using separate bins to source separate various materials, and also reuse items that still had future use but no longer wanted by one owner. And they put up a sort of a horticultural poly hut, and people could put materials in there, and they measured the weights of diversion and so on. And it became very popular. And in the last few years, it's the one closest to me, of course, up in Ward 1. Staff seemed to discourage placement of reuse items in the reuse area, simply saying, oh, don't put it there, throw it in the waste, which startled me and discouraged me. And then I had a sort of memo from staff saying, well, we're just going to close it. We're going to board up that building and not use it at all. And, you know, it's 45 minutes one way to the next CRCA or CRC for people up in northwest Caledon. That means an hour and a half drive. So they're just not going to do it. So I just think the closure defeats part of the diversion from landfill and attempts at sustainability that we have buried in our programs now. So my request is, what are the plans for reopening the reuse at the Quarry Road Yard?
Norm, do you?
Yeah, and maybe just a bit of background, and Councillor Sinclair is right. We do have reuse drop-off areas at all of our CRCs. The one up in Caledon is a little bit different. It's not one of the formal ones. It's it's just a shed where people can bring stuff in, and it's kind of, if you have stuff to drop off, you drop it off. If you want to go through it and pick something up, you can go through it and pick something up. A couple of things we found over the years, more and more of the material being dropped off is actually waste. It's not reusable by anybody. So we have to go through it every week and just kind of clean it out and throw stuff in the garbage. The other thing is it's become a congregation point. Some of the folks in the community will come out and they'll be in the shed and they'll chit chat for 20 minutes or so with each other. So because of that, during COVID, we had to close the shed just to keep people safe. But as we looked at it, and over the years, the amount of material that actually was being reused has dropped off quite a bit, and the amount of garbage that was being put in the shed has increased. So our decision was it's just not worth reopening. It's a lot of extra work to keep it open. We lose tip fees on any garbage that might be put in there. We can look at ways of reopening it. There'd have to be rules. It would probably require a little bit more staffing to make sure that the stuff that's being put in for reuse is actually reusable. And I know residents, and I'm the same. I drop something off. I think it would be valuable to somebody. But I know, and we hear this from Goodwill and Salvation Army and these other partners all the time. People sometimes have maybe a bad interpretation of what somebody else would use, right? That their stuff is not usually as reusable as they think it is. So we can look into ways of reopening it, but I don't think just opening it as a shed would be advised at this time, just because it doesn't actually generate a lot of reuse.
Norm, I was wondering,
how is that measured?
Well, I don't know that we're measuring kilogram by kilogram of material that is being reused there, because people put stuff in and somebody else might take it out before we look at it. But we do know that the frequency of having to go in and empty it out and put stuff in the garbage is going up quite a bit.
I'm just wondering, Ian, if you and Norm can go offline and maybe discuss a way, or even visit the site and do something that may be more proactive.
Well, sure, we'll give it a try. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll be in touch then.
Okay. I see Chair Yanika. You got your hand up?
Yeah, just very quickly on the point Ian was raising. Ian's well aware, but he hasn't raised it, and I'm sure Norm's aware of this as well. Historically, one of the big concerns is, to Ian's point, no, they won't take the 45-minute trip, but if they don't have the venues like these, they'll take a 10-minute trip and drop this crap all over Peel otherwise. We've had that experience as well, and Ian didn't speak to that, but I'm sure that's one of his concerns as well, that they won't just keep the garbage and they won't drive 45 minutes away. They just litter the rest of Peel. So, Norm, I know you know that. I'm sure Ian's aware of it as well. I just wanted to reemphasize that as a consideration as well in the discussion going forward. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think we've heard it from all of the Caledon councillors on a regular basis, and I've seen it. Having gone up there several times. In fact, I experienced it one time where a pickup truck, Councillor Singer, stopped in front of me and pulled over the side of the road. I could see the bag sticking out, and he didn't get out of his car or truck until I was up over the hill. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to come back and just take a look. I came back over the hill, and there he is, throwing it into the ditch. Pretty sad. Anyway, I don't see anybody else on the board. Any other business from any other member? Seeing none, we don't have an in-camera meeting. And the next meeting is June 10th. That's pretty close. Norm, do you have, what's on the agenda? Do you know offhand?
Right now, there's nothing on the agenda. We had one report that got pulled. Chances are it'll get canceled. The only reason we kept it is in case questions came up on specifically the AD report. If questions come up at council, it'll give us an opportunity to go and address those questions.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that forward. So we'll just keep our eye on the next week's or the next meeting on the AD report and also any other further items. So we'll just watch your agendas.
Okay.
Councillor Rass, will you move adjournment? Good meeting. Learned a lot today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Next is audit committee in 20 minutes, 30 minutes.